What happens when a beloved national treasure meets a host who thinks she knows better than everyone else? In just 37 seconds, one comment would destroy years of television, goodwill, and expose the true nature of morning TV's most entitled presenter. Dame Judi Dench walked onto the bright studio set that Tuesday morning with her usual graceful smile. The cameras rolled as she settled into the plush orange chair across from Lorraine, who was already wearing that practiced grin that never quite reached her eyes. "Dame Judi, welcome back to the show," Lorraine said, leaning forward with fake enthusiasm. "I have to say, you look absolutely radiant this morning." "Thank you, Lorraine. It's always lovely to be here," Judi replied warmly, adjusting her elegant navy blazer. Her voice carried that distinctive warmth that had charmed audiences for decades. The interview started innocently enough. They discussed Judi's latest project, a small independent film about aging gracefully. But something was different about Lorraine today. There was an edge to her voice, a sharpness that hadn't been there in previous interviews. "Now, Dame Judi," Lorraine said, her tone shifting slightly, "at 88 years old, don't you think it's time to perhaps step back from these demanding roles? I mean, surely there are younger actresses who could bring more energy to these parts?" The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. Judi's eyebrows raised slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I beg your pardon?" Judi said quietly, her voice still steady but with a hint of steel beneath the silk. "Well, I'm just saying," Lorraine continued, apparently oblivious to the danger she was walking into. "At your age, shouldn't you be thinking about retirement? Spending time with grandchildren? Knitting, perhaps?" The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Judi's hands, which had been resting gracefully in her lap, now gripped the arms of her chair slightly tighter. "Lorraine," Judi said, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who had commanded stages and screens for over 6 decades. "I think there might be some confusion here. Are you suggesting that age determines talent?" "Oh, no," Lorraine backtracked quickly, but then immediately made things worse. "I just think that maybe it's time for you to pass the torch to the next generation. You know, step aside gracefully while you still can." The audience was dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. Even the production crew seemed to be holding their breath. Judi's eyes narrowed slightly. This was the moment when everyone realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. The beloved Dame Judi Dench, known for her kindness and professionalism, was about to show what happens when you push a true professional too far. "Step aside gracefully?" Judi repeated, her voice now carrying a dangerous quiet. "While I still can?" "Well, yes," Lorraine said, completely missing the warning signs. "I mean, let's be honest. Dame Judi, the industry is changing. Audiences want to see fresh faces. Young energy. Not," she gestured vaguely, "well, not actors who might forget their lines or need help getting around set." That was the moment everything changed. The respect that had existed between interviewer and guest evaporated instantly. Judi's face transformed from polite patience to something much more formidable. "Forget my lines?" Judi said, her voice now carrying the full weight of her theatrical training. "Need help getting around set? Lorraine, are you quite serious?" "I'm just being practical," Lorraine said, somehow still not reading the room. "We all have to face reality at some point." "Reality?" Judi's voice rose slightly, still controlled but with unmistakable power behind it. "The reality is that I've been working professionally since before you were born. The reality is that I have more energy and professionalism in my little finger than most people half my age have in their entire bodies." Lorraine shifted uncomfortably in her chair. For the first time since the conversation began, she seemed to realize she might have misjudged the situation. "Now, Dame Judi, I didn't mean to offend," she started, but Judi held up one elegant hand. "Oh, but you did mean to offend, didn't you?" Judi said, her voice now cutting through the studio like a blade. "You brought me on this show not to discuss my work, not to celebrate my achievements, but to suggest that I should shuffle off into the sunset because you think I'm too old to be relevant." The cameras kept rolling, capturing every word, every gesture, every moment of this unexpected confrontation. The crew members exchanged glances, unsure whether they should intervene or just keep filming what was clearly becoming television gold. "That's not what I said," Lorraine protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Judi challenged. "You suggested I should step aside gracefully. You implied that I might forget my lines. You recommended knitting as a more suitable activity for someone of my advanced years. Tell me, Lorraine, what exactly did you mean?" Lorraine's famous confidence was crumbling by the second. She looked to her producers off camera, but they were just as transfixed by what was unfolding as everyone else. I was just trying to have an honest conversation about aging in Hollywood, Lorraine said, her voice smaller now. An honest conversation? Judi's voice carried decades of Shakespearean training, filling every corner of the studio. There is nothing honest about suggesting that age equals incompetence. There is nothing honest about implying that experience is a liability rather than an asset. The silence that followed was deafening. Lorraine sat frozen, finally understanding that she had awakened something she was completely unprepared to handle. Judi leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on Lorraine's. Let me share some honesty with you, my dear. I have performed for royalty. I've worked with the greatest directors of multiple generations. I've earned every accolade this industry has to offer. And you think I should take up knitting? The word knitting came out with such disdain that it seemed to echo in the studio. Dame Judi, please. Lorraine tried one more time. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Judi said, rising slowly from her chair with the grace and dignity of true royalty, is your belief that age gives you the right to be patronizing to those who have achieved more in their careers than you could dream of in 3 lifetimes? The cameras followed her as she stood, capturing the moment when Dame Judi Dench decided she had heard quite enough. Lorraine's eyes widened in panic as she realized what was happening. Dame Judi Dench, the woman who had graced stages and screens with unparalleled dignity for over 60 years, was preparing to walk out on live television. Dame Judi, please sit down, Lorraine said, her voice suddenly desperate. We can discuss this like adults. Judi turned back to face her, and the look in her eyes could have frozen fire. Like adults? You mean the way you discussed my career? By suggesting I'm too decrepit to remember my lines? I never said decrepit, Lorraine protested weakly. You didn't need to say it, Judi replied, her voice carrying the full weight of her years on stage. Your meaning was crystal clear. You think that because I have lived longer and achieved more than most people ever will, that somehow makes me less capable, less relevant, less worthy of respect. The studio audience sat in stunned silence. Many of them had come expecting a light, cheerful morning chat with one of Britain's most beloved actresses. Instead, they were witnessing the dismantling of everything they thought they knew about morning television politeness. Look, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot here, Lorraine said, forcing that practiced smile back onto her face. Why don't we start over? Talk about your wonderful career, your incredible achievements? Judi's laugh was sharp and humorless. Now you want to talk about my achievements? After you've spent the last several minutes suggesting I should retire because I'm past my prime? I was just asking legitimate questions about the industry, Lorraine insisted, but her confidence was completely gone now. Legitimate questions? Judi's voice rose again. Tell me, Lorraine, when was the last time you asked a male actor of my age whether he should step aside for younger talent? When did you last suggest that Ian McKellen should take up gardening instead of acting? The comparison hit like a thunderbolt. Everyone in the studio knew she was absolutely right. The double standard was glaring and undeniable. Lorraine opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. That's different, is it? Judi demanded. How exactly is it different? Because I'm a woman? Because you think women of a certain age should disappear quietly while men are allowed to continue working until they choose to stop? No, that's not what I meant, Lorraine said. But even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. Then what did you mean? Judi pressed. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you brought me onto your show to humiliate me on national television, to suggest that everything I've worked for, everything I've achieved, counts for nothing because I've had the audacity to age. The production team was frantically signaling from behind the cameras, but neither woman was paying attention to them now. This had become something bigger than a television interview. This was about respect, dignity, and the way society treats its elders, especially women. Dame Judi, you're twisting my words, Lorraine said, desperation creeping into her voice. Am I? Judi asked. Let me repeat your exact words back to you. You said, and I quote, at your age, shouldn't you be thinking about retirement? Spending time with grandchildren? Knitting, perhaps? Does that sound twisted to you? Lorraine's face flushed red. Being quoted back to herself made her words sound even worse than they had the first time. I was just suggesting that there might be other fulfilling ways to spend your time, she said weakly. Other fulfilling ways? Judi's voice was incredulous. More fulfilling than doing what I love? More fulfilling than continuing to challenge myself and grow as an artist? More fulfilling than sharing my experience and knowledge with younger generations who actually want to learn from it? Well, no, but nothing, Judi cut her off. You made assumptions about what I should want based solely on my age. You decided, without knowing anything about my health, My energy levels, my passion, or my capabilities, that I should quietly fade away. The silence stretched on. Lorraine looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would rescue her from this situation she had created. I think perhaps we should take a commercial break, she suggested hopefully. Oh no, Judi said firmly. We're going to finish this conversation right here, right now. You wanted to discuss aging in the industry? Let's discuss it properly. Lorraine visibly swallowed. She had unleashed something she couldn't control, and now she had to face the consequences. The truth is, Lorraine, Judi continued, that your attitude represents everything that's wrong with how we treat experience and wisdom in this country. You see wrinkles and assume incompetence. You see age and assume irrelevance. You see a lifetime of achievement and suggest it's time to step aside. That's not fair, Lorraine protested. Isn't it? Judi challenged. Then explain to me why you thought it was appropriate to suggest that I, someone who has been acting professionally for longer than you've been alive, should consider retirement while younger. Less experienced actors should take my place. Lorraine had no answer. The question hung in the air like an accusation. The fact is, Judi continued, you brought me here not because you respect my work or value my contribution to the arts, but because you thought you could score easy points by patronizing a senior citizen on live television. That's absolutely not true, Lorraine said, but her voice lacked any conviction. Then why, Judi asked, her voice now deadly quiet, did every one of your questions focus on my age rather than my craft? Why did you suggest activities like knitting instead of asking about my current projects? Why did you immediately assume that being 88 means I'm ready to be put out to pasture? The questions came like arrows, each one finding its mark. Lorraine had no defense because there was no defense for what she had done. I see I'm not going to get a real answer, Judi said, straightening her blazer with dignity, which tells me everything I need to know about your intentions and your character. With those words, she turned toward the studio exit, her head held high, leaving Lorraine sitting alone under the bright studio lights, finally understanding the magnitude of what she had just unleashed. The click of Judi's heels on the studio floor echoed through the deadly silence. Each step was measured, deliberate, carrying the weight of decades of stage presence and professional dignity. But Lorraine, in her desperation, made one final catastrophic mistake. Dame Judi, wait, she called out, her voice cracking with panic. Surely you're being a bit dramatic about this whole thing. Judi stopped dead in her tracks. Slowly, very slowly, she turned back around. The look on her face could have withered flowers. Dramatic? She said, her voice now carrying a dangerous calm that was somehow more terrifying than her earlier anger. You think I'm being dramatic? Well, yes, Lorraine said, apparently having learned nothing from the past several minutes. I mean, we were just having a conversation about your career. There's no need to storm off like this. The audacity of those words hit the studio like a physical blow. Even the camera operators were shaking their heads in disbelief. Just having a conversation? Judi repeated, walking slowly back toward Lorraine's chair. Is that what you call systematically insulting a guest on your own show? I wasn't insulting you, Lorraine insisted, but her voice was getting smaller with each word. You told me I should retire because of my age. You suggested I take up knitting. You implied I might forget my lines. You said younger actresses could bring more energy to roles. And now you're calling me dramatic for having the audacity to object to your condescension? Each accusation landed like a hammer blow. Lorraine shrank further into her chair with every word. Those weren't insults, she said weakly. They were just observations. Observations? Judi's voice rose to fill every corner of the studio. Let me share some observations with you, my dear. You are a television presenter who has built a career on being pleasant and inoffensive. You have never won an Oscar, a BAFTA, a Tony, or an Olivier Award. You have never been made a Dame of the British Empire for services to drama. You have never been invited to perform for the Queen. And yet you have the unmitigated gall to suggest that I should step aside? The words hung in the air like a judicial sentence. Lorraine looked as though she wanted to disappear entirely. But you're calling my professional judgment into question, Judi continued, when your greatest achievement is reading autocue pleasantly each morning. You're suggesting I lack the energy for demanding roles when I've been performing 8 shows a week on the West End while you've been sitting behind a desk asking celebrities about their favorite recipes. It was brutal, precise, and absolutely devastating. Everyone in the studio knew they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Dame Judi, please, Lorraine whispered. I never meant any disrespect. But that's exactly what you showed, Judi replied, her voice now carrying the full authority of her legendary status. "From the moment I sat down, you treated me not as an accomplished professional, but as a quaint old lady who should be grateful for your attention." "That's not true," Lorraine protested, but even she didn't sound convinced. "Isn't it?" Judi asked. "Then why didn't you ask me about my technique? About my approach to different roles? About what I've learned from working with the greatest directors and actors of multiple generations? Why did you immediately jump to suggestions about retirement and knitting?" Lorraine had no answer because there was no good answer. She had revealed her own prejudices and assumptions, and now they were being held up for everyone to see. "The truth is, Lorraine," Judi said, "you don't actually respect experience or wisdom. You see them as obstacles to be moved aside rather than treasures to be valued. You think that being young and energetic matters more than being skilled and knowledgeable." "I respect your achievements," Lorraine said desperately. "Do you?" Judi challenged. "Because nothing about this interview suggests that. Nothing about your questions or your suggestions indicates any real respect for what I've accomplished or what I continue to contribute." She paused, letting that sink in, then delivered what would become the most quoted line of the entire encounter. "You invited Dame Judi Dench onto your show, Lorraine, but you clearly wanted to interview some doddering old woman who would smile sweetly while you patronized her. Unfortunately for you, I am not that woman, and I never will be." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped humming. Judi adjusted her blazer one final time, looked directly into the main camera, and spoke to the audience at home. "To anyone watching who thinks that age means you should accept disrespect or lower expectations, let me tell you something. Your experience matters. Your knowledge matters. Your continued contributions matter. Don't let anyone suggest otherwise." Then she turned back to Lorraine one last time. "And as for you, my dear, perhaps you should spend some time reflecting on why you thought this approach was appropriate. Good day." With that, Dame Judi Dench walked off the set with her head held high, leaving behind a stunned studio, a humiliated host, and a piece of television history that would be replayed and discussed for generations. Lorraine sat alone under the bright lights, finally understanding that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. She had challenged a true professional, questioned a living legend, and been found completely wanting. The cameras kept rolling, capturing her sitting there in the wreckage of what was supposed to have been a simple morning chat show interview, knowing that she would never live down the day she tried to patronize Dame Judi Dench and learned exactly why she was a dame in the first place.